It's like learning to see in color again. I was finally cool with being in my own head and being in a meditative state. My mind was just opened, and I was seeing in color again. I was way more optimistic. I was happy.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Emory Wongor. He is a former Marine and outdoor enthusiast that has completed the Pacific Crest Trail, which makes me wonder about his psychology for a guy that was willing to hike almost 2,700 miles from Mexico to Canada on some of the roughest terrain in the continental United States. Welcome to the podcast, Emory.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really glad to be here.
Okay, let's just start off with this. What motivated you to endure something like that?
Boy, you know what? I think I'm still, it's been a lot of years and I still wonder that same question. I feel like it evolves over time. But at the time, curiosity. I crossed the Pacific Crest Trail to and from work every single day. There's a trail crossing up here in the Pacific Northwest, and it was on my way to and from work. And during hiker season, I would start seeing these homeless looking people hanging out in the town. And I gave a ride to a couple of them to various trails. And every time I would, I'd ask them if it was worth it. Because at this point, they're 500 miles from completing the whole trail. And so they've done about, 2,000 miles or so. And you figure, after 2,000 miles, these people would be like, no, I'm fed up and done with it. And they all had smiles on their faces and they all said it was worth it. And I'm like, well, darn it. And I have this part of me that if there's a challenge out there or there's a thing, I start getting really curious and it gets a hold of me. And then it was everything that I thought about for a number of years. And I was in this portion of my career where I was like, it'd been a while since I really challenged myself, the Marine Corps and everything else. Like I just was in this like plateau mentally and like a little bit physically. And I was like, I think I have to do this thing. And in these long trails, I describe it to people as like, they just tend to get a hold of you. Like if you're curious about it, the curiosity will not go away until you find out one way or another. And whether that means you spend a day on the trail and then you decide it's not for you, or you spend 120 days on trail and and then you leave, or however long you spend 6 months hiking, one way or another, you have to like satisfy this curiosity. And I could tell you that, I wanted to find out if I could do it and I could, challenge myself and, learn all these things about myself. But really I think it was born out of a curiosity. And not only that, but I hiked with through a program that was putting combat veterans on these long distance trails as a way to like kind of walk off the war, if you will.
Yeah. And
connect with other people. And I felt like, and kind of reintegrate yourself into society. And it's been a number of years since I deployed, but I would say that was another big part of it, was just kind of like having time to myself to kind of decompress and having no idea what that means.
Yeah. So when were you in the military? What years?
2002 to 2007.
Okay. So you guys were there were you for the initial push in Iraq? And
yeah, we were there right after the initial push. Like I remember driving all our stuff from Kuwait up to, Fallujah and stuff. Like it was during those days, still moving all the equipment into country.
Yeah, I did some work with some veterans that returned home, a double amputee and a single amputee, and they had to do that initial push, and they were given substandard equipment. They were just putting flak jackets on the floor of the Humvees to prevent them from suffering the consequences of IED explosions. When that's kind of like protecting you with saran wrap from a lighter or something. And so they were really damaged. And we did a lot of outdoor stuff, and I took them around the world. We went to Africa, and it's interesting to see how people get over that. You have a lot of people that are suffering. They take psychedelics. A lot of them go off the rails and become alcoholics. But I'm sure when you were on that trail, they say a trail runners, they say they'll meet Jesus on some of those trails.
Yeah.
But from a walking meditation standpoint, did you feel like not only it metabolized maybe some of your combat trauma, but that it just changed your mentality and the way you see the world?
Yeah, absolutely. At first, I remember there was a moment in time where, look, when you through hike, when you're going to go into like hiking 2,000 miles, this is something that has to happen all day long. Like there's not time to just hang out. So you're on a rigid schedule. You have to wake up, you hike all day long, and then you go to sleep, and you do that over and over and over again because you have somewhere to be. If your intention is to make it to Canada. And what that entails is a lot of time in your own head, like more so than any other possible thing that I've ever done. Like I've spent a lot of time doing nothing and having silence, and it's pale in comparison to hiking the PCT because you have so much time to yourself. You can only listen to so many podcasts. You can only listen to so much music. There's only so many conversations you can have with people that at some point you run out and you're just forced to be with you. And that is terrifying because at first it's very, very uncomfortable. And I remember early on, I was still in the phase of hiking to get somewhere and not hiking to just hike. And those are two very different scenarios. When you're hiking to get somewhere, you're just trying to get through the walking and get to the breaks. When you're hiking just to hike, you actually take breaks because you need to do another stretch. And it's a kind of a flip of a mentality, if that makes sense. And at first I was like, I don't want to be in my head right now. I need to find ways to entertain myself. Counting rocks, trying to think of things. And I was like, I got to figure, and this was like day 2 or day 3. I was like, oh, I'm going to be really bored on this trail. And then I remember eventually you kind of work through this process in your brain to where I remember waking up when I was like maybe 1,500 miles into the trail. And I just realized one day I was like, oh, I've stopped hiking to take breaks. I've started taking breaks to hike. And what that meant to me was I was finally cool with being in my own head and being in a meditative state, because there's this thing that happens. There's this like pitter patter of your feet. When I left the trail, I missed the sound of my feet hitting the trail. I missed, getting deep and like getting into really weird places in your head to where like you kind of freak your own self out. Your thoughts start wandering and you're clearing out the cobwebs. And then eventually you get to this point of clarity. And no, you don't get that very often in life. And that's, I think, if I really think about one of the greatest gifts that trail ever gave me, like this 2-foot wide hike, trail up from Mexico to Canada, it's a gift of being able to like be cool, being in my head and understanding it's okay.
Yeah, in Buddhism, the one meditation that they say the Buddha invented was the Vipassana or the Vipassana. And it's a minimum 10-day meditation in silence. The word means insight. And I did that a number of years ago, and it was very, very difficult, but it was similar to what the experience that you were describing here. As at first, there was like all this static and just jumbling thoughts. And then the deeper I got into it, I finally got to a place of calm, that like complete calm, like the bottom of the ocean. And when I have like very difficult times that I'm going through, I remind myself of that place. But I got to where your mind becomes so sensitive because you have nothing else to process. You're in the dark day after day, and you're focusing first for 3 days on this space above your lip, under your nose. Then you bring your attention to your head, and then you scan up and down. And on the 7th day, you can like feel your molecules. But in that place, the word clarity, like that's what comes to mind, like unadulterated clarity. And it's a really really wild place because you think fundamentally that's who you are before we're contaminated and indoctrinated, educated with and just as absorbers of information. So on a good day, like what's the average amount of miles that you would hike in a day?
We started out by doing, you usually start out easy on your body by doing 12 to 15, maybe, maybe bump it up to 20 for the first month or so. But we kind of held ourselves back because you don't want to get an overuse injury. And it's just so hard on your body. You're on your feet all day. And unless your body's really prepared for that, 15 miles is a really big day. It used to take us all day long to do 15 miles. Excuse me. And when you get done with it, you're like wiped out.
Yeah.
Fast forward to the last 500 miles. And we were doing no less than 25 miles a day and, maxing out at 29, 30 miles a day. And that's through one of the, some of the hardest terrain on the trail, just up and down all the time through Washington State. And the crazy part is that 25 miles felt like 15. You get to the end of 25 miles and you're like, whew, I am ready to lay down and go to bed. But you're 10 miles past where you were in the beginning. So yeah, your body's just a machine at that point. And that it kind of, it's this weird, it's not just a hike. One of the things that I realized later on was these long distance backpacking trips, they're characterized as these long adventures and their hikes. And yes, they are those things, but they're an opportunity to meditate. And they're almost like a spiritual journey. And people have been doing this for like thousands of years, right?
Walkabouts, everything.
Yeah, walkabouts, like these events. And when I started thinking about these long distance trails as that, it totally changed everything. And I think I wish that people would categorize them as that, because I think they'd get a lot more attention, and I think they would be understood far beyond just taking a pretty picture.
Yeah, Mahatma Gandhi encouraged everyone that the best form of exercise was long walks. He would walk 20 miles, 12 miles. And he did that because it offered the mind an escape from the tension that it suffered while sitting and working. And then it got you in shape, but it wasn't a high impact thing. So what I think a lot of people might not understand is what's happening to your body there. The most I've hiked the world, all around the world. The most I've ever done anywhere was 25 miles on flat ground. The most I've ever done in a day in the mountains is 15 miles, and I felt like I got beat with a bag of rocks by the time it was over. And I know that feeling of what it's like to wake up the next day and your Achilles are hurting, and then everything's just, your boots have beat you up, and you have to keep going. But to do that for months, that's gonna build some mental calluses into you. It's gonna make you you're a tough bastard, bro. There's no way around it.
Well, it's funny. The human body, you feel like you're 80 years old every day. I mean, you wake up and, you're around these people as everyone's doing the same thing, and you get into camp and everyone's hobbling into camp, and they wake up in the morning and you're just like tiptoeing around. You're like, oh, my feet hurt. Everything hurts. But the craziest thing happens. You go to put your backpack on, and all of a sudden you get going and your body remembers what to do. And it's like inertia. All those things go away. And I became so fascinated with just the human body. And then not only that, but my own body. When you go through something like this, it's like a reconnection with like your own mind, but also your body. You're like, wow, okay, cool. My body can respond. My body does do this. And it's not easy. Like, that does not mean that it's an easy thing to do. Like, you have to be very disciplined to get yourself. No one's forcing you to do it. That's one of the most beautiful things about it. Is that
motivation?
I've done a lot of things. I've been a lot of places. I've done some. I don't know. I have some things that I've done in my life that I'm like, yeah, cool, I did that. But it seemed like all those things, when I was done with them, I was never fully convinced that I did them myself, that I earned it. And that sounds really strange, but I always felt like that. And the PCT was the first time that when I finished it, I was like, and to this day, I will get emotional about it because it took everything out of me. And you commit to yourself and the trail for so long. And when you're finally done, you're like, holy cow. Well, and that's something that no one can ever take away from you. And it felt like it was the first, yes, did you have some encouragement along the way? Sure. No one's carrying your backpack. No one is hiking those miles for you. It's on you, and you get to decide whether or not you wake up the next day. And there was many times, and one specifically where I told my hiking partner, I was like, I'm going home tomorrow. That's happening.
Yeah.
And then I didn't.
Yeah, to get back on the horse. So I really want to help illustrate what's happening here. I'm sure there's a way, if you like on all trails or something like that, you can figure how many feet of elevation change that you did. But we're talking millions of feet of elevation change.
There's probably a metric, you Google it real fast, like, the elevation gain of the PCT. It's a lot. Yeah, because the early realization was they call it the Pacific Crest Trail, not the Pacific Valley, right? Yeah. So you're constantly up on the ridges, and then every time you go into town, you got to go down, and then you go right back up. So you're constantly going up and down and up and down, and I started this. Hopefully you'll like this, but a mantra that I created for myself. I found myself obsessing over climbing, and I would sit in camp at night and I'd look at this elevation profile on my phone, on my navigation app, and I would just see this like straight line, and then back down, and you start sitting there calculating all these, oh, that's a 7-mile hill, or that's a 3-mile hill, and then in your mind, you know how long it takes you to do that. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be on this hill for 2 hours. And you haven't even hiked the trail yet. You haven't even hiked it yet. And here you are sitting in camp worrying about it. It's not even done. You're not out of breath. You're about to go to sleep. And I did that. I did that every night for like 3 months. And at some point in Oregon, I was full of anxiety, thinking about all these hills that were ahead of me. And I was like, I have to be done with this. I have to be done with it. And because I thought to myself, I'm like, well, you got here regardless. And there's a lot of steep hills, and I got up and over them just fine. Was I out of breath? Sure. But if I was tired, I took a break, and I decided to put that away. And I told myself, just hike today and not tomorrow. Just hike the hill in front of you. Bless you. Hike the hill in front of you and let it be. If you're tired, take a break. But if you're looking for the one hill to quit on, just quit now, because there's going to be hills. And I started telling myself every day, like, hike today, not tomorrow, and plan ahead. Sure, be prepared, but don't obsess.
You're just getting through that. Just get me through one day at a time, one hill at a time, one step at a time. Because on those ascensions, you find yourself. I don't know if you know who Jim Shockey is, but. But Jim's a friend of mine. He always says mountains are mental, and I've hiked mountains with him. And it's on that ascension that's where you meet yourself. You really, really do. You like, I will find Brady right there. And that's when you have that conversation of enduring. And, it's funny, you talk about like those relationships and the conversations you have. And what I have this theory that humor was developed as a coping mechanism, and that's it's very common in men, and women are funny, but it's different. Our humor often is about the bad things and the suck, right? And I feel like that's something we use to deal with pain, to deal with elements, to deal with fear, is we make jokes about it. And you got to think, at one time the Eskimos were fighting polar bears with a stick. So and they would go out as a rite of passage to go kill a polar bear with a sharpened stick. And you have to when you face those types of fears or those kinds of suffering, for whatever reason, laughing about it makes it better. And I remember being on the mountains with friends, and it just gets so bad that sometimes you just laugh. And the humor is the only thing that pulls you through. Have you experienced that?
Oh, 100%. In two cases, the buddy that I hiked with, we would get, he was just a funny guy in general, but we would get into these climbs. And at some point, I remember there was a couple of them that were just so ridiculous. And we were so tired that you start giggling to yourself. You just get the giggles, right? You're just like laughing and you're like laughing about nothing. No one told a joke. You're just like, this is so ridiculous right now. We look like idiots, or like you're humble. There was one time we were hiking through snow and it was so cold and so miserable. There was 3 of us, and everyone was just, as you explained, just miserable and like not really having a lot of fun right now. And all of a sudden the 3 of us start cracking up at how ridiculous the whole thing was, because we were just we were taking a break for lunch and we were like, this is terrible. This is absolutely awful. We were moving at a snail's pace, post-holing through snow, falling down. It was horrible. Can't make any miles. And we were like, this is never going to end. And all of a sudden we just start laughing. And on the extreme end of that, so that proves your point, but on the extreme end of that, the guy that I hiked with is a Bronze Star recipient he's a Navy corpsman, so a medic, for anyone that doesn't know. He was awarded a Bronze Star for his services. And when we talked about his experiences, he used humor to cope. And it was understood between the 2 of us that what he was talking about was not funny.
Yeah.
It was very serious. But he didn't want to allow it to control him. And so he used humor to
process it and to
process it. And in some circles, that's probably frowned upon. Like the things he would say, you'd be like, people would probably be put off by it. But for those that understand, totally makes sense. And I agree with you 100%. I've never thought about, the purpose of humor, but it's a good argument to make that it was created as a coping mechanism.
I think comedians, right? There's some darkness that is attached to a lot of those guys. And that's how they process it, or that's how they obfuscate it. But then there's the other side of it, which is just when you discover the joy in suffering, and it just hits you at that point. Like at that point, you guys were so invested and so in, and then you realize the ridiculous nature of the extreme circumstance that you've put in. And you're like, why would any person in the world subject themselves to this extent? And so I got another question for you. So I'm thinking about this, and for people that know the West, those mountains, right, they're covered in snow for a lot of the year. And so then when the snow melts off, your hiking surface is compromised, right? And so, but then you have such a short time of summer before the snow comes back. So what's the window that you're able to do this?
Well, so to that point, that's the huge challenge of doing these trails. And one that I did not appreciate at the time is that there's only a period of time that you can do it. And I kicked off in April. Some people kick off in March. But that, because if you're going south to north is the traditional way of doing it. You start in March, April timeframe, maybe May. You better be covering big miles if you're starting late May. But you have to get the Sierra after, it has to start melting. You got to get through, you have to time that. So you have like 700 miles or so of desert hiking before the Sierra starts. You have to time that correctly. If you go too early, you can't get through. If you go too late, you can get through just fine. But then you have the North Cascades in Washington State to deal with. And snow can start flying in August if in those northern regions. So I wrapped up Labor Day weekend, so September. And some people keep hiking through September, early October, but it's pretty dangerous. Those mountains get pretty steep. The passes get really scary, and that new snowfall is really, really dangerous. So you have about from we'll call it March to September through September to complete this hike. And it sounds like a lot of time, and it is, but you know,
you can't
take too many.
mess around.
You got to keep moving.
Yeah. So, well, how many times did you just eat it on the trail?
What do you mean, like just fall and like?
Yeah, bust and
Yeah, all the time. I mean, one time I flew myself off the trail for some reason. I just found myself in the bushes. I was like, what happened? Like, you're just hiking and all of a sudden you just trip. I mean, you're post-holing through snow if you hit snow, and it's really scary because you hear like river running underneath you, you know?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, if I go down in this thing, I don't know where I'm going to pop out at. So it really, it's the adventure. And you can choose your own adventure. You can choose to wait. You can choose to kind of, navigate your way through. But yeah, for sure. I mean, falling is kind of part of it. Slipping down some stuff. For the most part, you're not doing off-road or off-trail travel.
It's a beaten
unless
trail.
For some reason, but
yeah. One time I was hiking in Pakistan, and there's a tree in Africa that's a bush called the wait a bit bush, and it has these. It looks like frazzled hair that has these very supple, bendable, almost like tentacle branches, and all the hooks are reversed. Okay. And so what happens is when it catches you, it stops you. You can't. And if you fall into it, it wraps you up. Right. And so they call it the wait a bit, right? Because it holds you up. And so there's a similar bush in Pakistan, and I fell off the trail and was sliding down rocks, and I got in that tree. And I mean, it looked like a tackle box that had been in the dryer, just like I had a friend pulling me out of that thing. I was covered in blood, but I was grateful for it because it stopped me from eating into the rocks. And I think about that, man. It's just like you do on those trails. All of a sudden, when you're not, you get complacent. You can be in trouble really, really quick. So what was it like after you have conditioned yourself for that many months? Mentally, physically, spiritually, and you're metabolizing and processing that hike as you go through it, and you're in that state, you're something of a flow state. What is it like when it ends?
It's not good.
You wanted a lot of people, you wanted more trail?
Yeah, I mean, it was a mixed bag. You're very much done with it at that point. Mentally, you are exhausted. It's it feels like a bad relationship, like, because you love it, but you hate it at the same time. You want it to end, but you don't want it to end because it's been such an amazing summer and such an amazing time. And you're like, and there's a very well-known condition, post-trail blues. And this is why people end up doing multiple trails, because they get addicted to that feeling, which is probably a very good addiction, flow state addiction. It's very challenging to go back, because I had taken a leave of absence from work when I was getting when I was going to be coming back. I was going to be married like a month later. I was getting married and going back to work around the same time. And I had to go back to sitting in like a cubicle behind a desk. And I was not happy about it. I was thinking about all my time on the trail, where I wish I could have been. And I would sit there and replay my campsites in my mind. I would replay moments in time, and I would start missing it. And to re-normalize yourself to that trail, or to life after the trail, is very difficult, because the way I describe hiking these big trails is it's like learning to see in color again. As you, from my experience at growing up, and I have kids now. I have a 5 and a 7-year-old, and everything is magical and everything is possible and they see things that you don't see. And that's one of the gifts of being a parent, is like getting to experience life through the eyes of your kids, right? And it's so magical all the time. But somewhere along the way, if you're not careful, the magic starts to fade. And
you lose it.
Life starts piling on you. You have a mortgage, you have a relationship, whether it's good or bad, it's there, and it's a responsibility. Maybe you have kids, a job, whether you like it or don't, it's a responsibility. And eventually the magic stops if you're not careful. And where I was at is I thought that I was like a happy-go-lucky person, and I was optimistic. And then I spent 2,000 miles with my own self, realizing towards the end of the trail that like my mind was just opened, and I was seeing in color again. I was way more optimistic. I was happy. And what was weird is people were naturally drawn to me.
You had something they wanted.
Yeah, dude. I don't know how to explain it, but on multiple occasions for the last like 1,000 miles, random strangers would just like, it was like a magnet. They just wanted to talk to me and like wanted to interact. And I was baffled by it because that never really happened to me before. I'm like a friendly person, but I just didn't ever have those random occurrences. And here these people were just randomly like talking to me, and it was the strangest thing. So there was some sort of chemical change that was happening in my body, along with like a mental change and like a physiological change. And I was just seeing things differently. And then having that removed and having to go back to like your normal life and trying to like figure out like, was that real?
Yeah.
Or was this pretend? Was I just pretending? Or was what I experienced true? Or was it just an artifact?
A frequency that you tapped in temporarily or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I am fascinated with answering that question now.
Yeah.
I am fascinated with it because I think, if I were to guess, I think I was tapping into what my natural state.
Oh, well, the whole time that you've been talking, the term in my mind has been natural state. And so I do notice that after you do things like this, there's a beckoning. It's almost like the dog hearing the other dog's howl, something asking you to join the hunt. And it does call to you. You know, there are people, I've met these hikers. I had property in Colorado, spent a lot of time out in the West, and I met a lot of people doing the Continental Divide. And then you'll meet these people that have done it twice. And then you meet a couple people that did the American Discovery Trail, which I forget, it's like 5,000 miles. And you wonder if it's just, you get a comfort there that you don't get elsewhere. Are you ever called to do it again?
Every day.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, what do you think about Tara Dower and what she did on the freaking Appalachian Trail? I don't know if you know about this, but a 31-year-old lady, she did the Appalachian Trail this year, and she did I think it's 2,150 miles, and she did it in 40 days.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's so beautiful. A buddy of mine, he just did the Appalachian, I think it's unsupported, maybe it's supported, but he just broke the record. His trail name's Legend. His name's Jeff.
Yeah.
Awesome guy. It's amazing human feats of strength. I'm continually baffled by it, and I don't understand how they do it, but they're at another level. And I think it's inspiring. I don't know what you get. I would be very curious to know what happens in your brain at that point. I think you're probably rewiring some stuff because you're just like pushed to the max, and it's probably for a good, rewiring for good. It's like you're just continually raising that bar. But I think what's really neat about it is that they're building a contrast in their life, right? They're proving to themselves what hard is and what easy is, and what hard is becomes their meter is changing, right? It's like what's hard becomes easy, and what's difficult becomes hard. It's like they're shifting the levers around. And I think that's, if I were to guess, I think a lot of the problems that we see socially in the United States and just around the world, I think people's compass is way off in terms of, or their measurements are way off on what is difficult and what is hard, because they're not willing to challenge themselves, or they're not out there trying to figure out where they're like, what's really hard.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like,
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that people are seeking their answers in comfort. I think that the answers don't come from comfort. The answers come from challenging yourself, and you'll learn about yourself. And then after a while, if you do it long enough, you'll find out that the other things don't really amount to much. My grandfather, on his deathbed, my grandfather died of lung cancer, and as he was dying, he repeated to me so many times, as you're dying, everything that you worried about in your life, you'll go back through your life, everything that you realized you were worrying didn't amount to a hill of beans. It didn't amount. So he just kept saying that. It won't amount to a hill of beans. And so that stuck with me. And I've found that hard things, they provide you so much personal and spiritual profit that what happens is you'll start to get uncomfortable when you're comfortable. You'll start to get uncomfortable. You're saying, what fungus spiritually grows on me, you know, as I continually subject myself to comfort, and what am I missing out on by being in this comfortable state? And I think that we have just taken convenience and we are underexposed. Something that you and I talked about on the phone is what the Dallas Safari Club has coined a nature deficit disorder. And there's a natural state that your body seeks. When I'm a free diver, and there's something called the mammalian diving reflex. And so once you got your goggles on, your snorkel, when you're in the water for about 40 minutes, your blood pressure drops, your heart rate lowers, and your body gets itself in a state to where it can hold oxygen, where it's less likely to be hypoxic. And there's a calm that comes over you, and you just feel that water has invited you in, and you are supposed to be there. And like, that's where you're meant to be. And I think when you go into nature, after you get past some of the trivial discomforts, there's a welcoming there. There is.
Yes.
And you don't want to let go of it. Unfortunately, it's like trying to catch running water in your hand. You have to have it. You can be with it or be without. You can't be half pregnant. You either are or you're not. You're either in the woods or you're not. And so I really encourage, if I've spent a lot of my life bringing people outdoors, and I know that's one of the gifts that you're bringing in the world is that you're inviting people, teaching them how to do it and taking them out there. And do you feel now that you're teaching this and that you're bringing people out, that you get kind of the same experience but by proxy now?
Yeah, absolutely. One of my greatest passions is, just being a helper to people getting outside and learning how to backpack. It is, excuse me, it's one of my greatest joys, because I know that there's something out there for them, that they're seeking something. And it might start with just like, they think that they have an adventure. They want to go on an adventure. But I know from experience, it's going to become more than that, whether they realize it now or they realize it in 10 years. It's taken me a lot of years to realize that my desire to get outside started as one thing, very surface level, and then it's now my desire has become completely different, and it's a way for me to work on myself and build myself up from the inside. And I know that when I help someone, I show them, I take them on a hike or I take them on a backpacking trip, I know that, cool, down the road, this could become the same thing for them. And if it doesn't, at a minimum, it's working in the background.
Amen, man. Amen.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And go ahead.
No, before I got a question after you finish your thought.
Well, I was going to tell you, um, on a personal level, the outdoors comes in a lot of flavors, and there's a lot of really good benefits to it. And I think that um, one of the benefits to me on a personal story, we talked about, like you mentioned, going out there and going through hardships and doing that, and that's really great. That's wonderful to know where you are on the spectrum and what's hard becomes easy and all that kind of stuff. But I had a life experience after the PCT that kind of gutted me a little bit, and I think I'm very grateful for my time spent on the PCT prior to that it taught me resilience and that I can just keep going, and that routine is very, very key. I got married after, and hopefully people, go for a good picture, but stay for the benefits, right? Shortly after the PCT, I got married, and then a year later, my first kid was born, right? So we were just getting after it, starting life. I was high on life. And shortly after my daughter was born, my parents got sick, and they both found out they had cancer, both of them at the same time, pretty much. And I had never experienced anything like that. And both of them ended up passing away within 2 years of each other.
That's terrible.
Yeah. And by the way, we had 2 kids at the time. I lost both my parents. My wife lost a brother-in-law at 27 years old. I lost an uncle, who I had my dad's brother. We had bonded after my dad's death, and he was kind of distant from his own kids. My dad and I had this weird relationship. It wasn't good, wasn't bad, but it was just kind of like a wall between us. And my uncle and I really connected. And I was like, whoa, because he found the same thing between him and my dad. And we were like, once we realized that, we were like, oh, we can be best friends. And it was amazing for a number of months. He died of pancreatic cancer a few months later. So we went through the ringer. And my wife had a grandfather die, and it was wild, man. It was the most insane. It was the most insane chapter of my life, and I had zero desire to go outside. I had zero desire to strain myself, to push myself. And I was in the middle of doing all this solo backpacking and hunting and challenging myself. And I was coming off this high of it's good to challenge yourself. It's good to be out there. Dude, I wanted nothing to do with it. And there was multiple times that I went outdoors that I went home early, and I was like, oh no, I think something's broken in me. Something has changed. Fast forward a number of years, I realized that the calluses that the outdoors and the PCT had built up in me were being used at the time. And I was using those bits of energy that I'd stored up to get through this challenging time. And now coming back out of it, I can feel myself wanting that desire again. And because at the time, I could not handle hard things in the outdoors, man. I couldn't do it because I was handling it all at home. The two things are so incredibly related. They're interconnected. And so you can use the outdoors. I would encourage people to if you're going through a hard time, go easy on yourself. Maybe don't go crazy in the outdoors unless you really want to. But in times when things are good and there's nothing crazy going on, use that opportunity to build up your mental and mental calluses through the outdoors. I think it will pay off. And now I'm looking at the outdoors in a completely different lens of okay, cool. I need to use this as a personal development tool just in case. And I need to bank some stuff in the event that happens in the future.
Yeah. Because those skills can be applied in other areas, and it gives you confidence that you'll make it through. And sorry that happened to you, man. That's a terrible season. That's a terrible season of life. Did you do the Kilimanjaro Trail?
I did not. I have not done that. Nope.
Yeah. So I met the guy that had the world record, and he did Kilimanjaro in 9 hours. And And it was interesting. So he had been a porter his whole life on the trail, and he was a very, very tall Tanzanian guy, and he ran back and forth for bringing things back and forth to the hikers, the paid hikers, and he realized that he was really good at this, and he challenged himself, and I think he did it the first time. He might have done it in 11 hours. And then he realized that he left a lot on the mountain. And so the next time, I think he did it like just over 9 hours. And
Wow.
for people that don't understand, Kilimanjaro has the highest amount of prominence in the world. So of actual mountain to climb, it's the most. And it comes out of the Serengeti. It's like Mount Olympus or something. It just comes out of nothing. And it was going to be like the biggest volcano that ever exploded. And I forget if it exploded or not, but it swelled up out of the ground. And I just could only imagine that is a tough mountain. People spend 10 days doing it, and that guy did it in 9 hours. And you just feel that these mountains compel people in a way that not much else does. You know, we have these people that have like the DSM might need a category for the Mount Everest people, right? I've talked to them, and they learn about the mountain, and then they perseverate. They can't think about anything else but Mount Everest. I've met 2 of them. They read about it. They read all the stories, and all they can think about night and day when they're at their office is Everest. And they don't care if it kills them. They think if I die doing it, that's a great place to do. And people go and they do die, but they have to, it calls to them and they have to answer it.
What is that? Because I've talked to him too. I don't understand. I mean, I'm not a mountaineer, but I remember I climbed Mount St. Helens. That's the only real mountain I've climbed, and it's not hard. Yeah. It's just a day hike. But I remember getting to the top, and I was like, oh, I think I could see how this could get addicting. Like, because there's nowhere else to go, and I feel like there's a lot of like energy around mountains.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a thing. But mountaineers, I think you're right. They're a very interesting category of human being. And I don't understand. I think, they're as freaky as everyone else. Like, they're just attracted to it. And you're right. Like, it's almost not even worth asking why, because I don't think they know. And I don't know if it's quantifiable. I think they could probably give you an answer.
Yeah.
And for all the like surface things that we could probably answer it for them. But there's something else going on, and I don't know what it is.
Yeah,
I'd love to find out.
There's a gravity that it has over them, and when people have that kind of connection to something, they don't have a choice. That's what's wild to me, is that mountain has taken the choice and objectivity. They have completely thrown their objectivity away to go to that mountain. Well, hey man, what's next for you? What's going on right now that you're excited about?
Man, a couple things. I think, I think I told you the other day that I spent the last year kind of recalibrating myself. Speaking of, something getting a hold of you and being compelled to do it. I started this, website. It was a personal blog at the time, Byland. And it was a way to just kind of document my experience getting into backpacking in the outdoors. And I thought to myself, I was like, well, if I'm learning, then and I share that with other people, great. And they can learn along the way. And at a minimum, it would be a way to document it for my own fun, right?
Yeah, your own.
And it's taught me a ton of skills along the way. I started a podcast, learned how to podcast, learned how to edit YouTube videos and things like that. It's been a creative outlet. And along the way, I was like, you know what? I'm going to build a beginner backpacking course. So I launched a beginner backpacking course that's helped a lot of people just like crack that nut, like get past the BS and like, all right, here's everything you need to know. If you have questions, great, go ahead. But I've done a lot of recalibration of like, what am I doing here? It's been a number of years since I've been doing it. And I think I can't not do it, man. You know, I can't, I've tried to quit. I've tried to get off the sauce, dude. I've tried like to get off the like outdoor, like preachy sauce. And I can't do it because every time I try, it finds its way back. It's like, you know, the world just finds a way to like, I mean, you like your team, like hitting me up and being like, I'm like, what is this? Like, why do these people keep coming into my life? Like, about the time I'm ready to quit the podcast or anything that I'm doing, someone hits me up and is like, hey, thank you. Like, and I'm like,
it's time to surrender,
like,
Emory. It's time to surrender. This is the way it's going to be, brother.
Dude, I keep waiting for it. And I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah.
The universe just keeps telling me that this is what you're supposed to do. And I feel like, you know, you can't decide overnight to be an artist. You know, like I'm going to be an artist today. Like, no. True artists, they do art and they can't stop. It's just like, that's the greatest, you know, all the great musicians and all the artists we know, that's what they do. It's chosen them. They don't choose it. And that's how I feel about this whole thing. So I'm like, for me, that's a long-winded way of saying like, I'm doubling down on finding out why we are so drawn to the outdoors. And I'm going to do that through podcasts and YouTube videos and the website. And along the way, I'm just like going to continue to share like bits and pieces of knowledge and helping people out. But like, I'm going to be rebooting the podcast and kind of taking it in another direction and just being like talking to people, average people, well-known people, and just like trying to answer the question, why we are drawn to doing this and what benefit is it to us. And I think a buddy of mine who established the America Perimeter Trail, he has spent a lot of time on trail. And he told me one time that, and I laughed at it in my mind, and then it haunted me for months and now years. He told me that he's like, hiking's going to save the world. And I was like, ha ha ha. Like in my mind, I was like, that's a great tagline. But the more I've meditated on that and the more I do it and the more I've seen what it does to other people, and that can mean anything from just going outside your front door and going for a walk to climbing Kilimanjaro or Everest. It doesn't matter what it is. To your point earlier, walking is really good for you. And I think he was onto something. So I want to spend the rest of my life, dude, like
answering that
from
question.
Here on out, encouraging people to just start walking and hiking.
So last night I had a stump cut at my house, and I got a fire pit outside. And one of my close friends, my son and I, we had a nice bonfire last night. And I was sitting there reflecting as the calmness comes over you and you look at that fire. Think how many millennia man has stared into those embers, and it has that calming effect on you. Mm. And I was like, you know, I have a bunch of wood because I had to clear a bunch of dead trees. And I was like, I'm going to do this till I run out of wood. And there's just something that is in us that wants us to be out there and sit there and let that heat touch you. And you watch, for people that haven't done it, they call it the caveman television. And it's because if you look into the ambers and your mind is calm, a story unfolds as you watch that fire burn up. And it is a trip. And it is so wild that we're absent from these things when for who knows for how many thousands of years we've been staring into that stuff. I know that people enjoy your work. I thought it was cool that Joe Rogan follows you. Dude, he doesn't follow a lot of people that aren't interesting. And I would encourage people to check out Emory's work. Tell them where they can find you, man.
If you Google Byland, BYLAND, you'll find it 2 words. But my website, byland.co, is the best place you can find me. Or you can just Google Emory Byland, and that you can find the website, the podcast, YouTube, all that kind of stuff. It's been fun. Byland is me and I am Byland. So, that's where you can find me, man. Thank you so much for the kind words.
You got a really awesome, a really cool vibe about you, and and it's really genuine. And there's also a piece that I think carries with you that people are probably attracted to. And it's one of the harder things for a person to get in life. And I'm glad that that mountain and your work with it has provided it to you. And hey, man, hopefully one day we'll share a campfire. You can take me out backpacking, but take it easy on me, okay?
Heck yeah, dude. Let's stare into a fire. Yeah. I'm ready.
Amen. Hey, thanks a lot, Emory. We'll see you again, man.
All right. Likewise. Thanks.